Today's scripture is Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring a little bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of choice flour, knead it, and make cakes." Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant who had hastened to prepare it. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate.
So it's a hot day. Abraham's an old man, and he's getting used to some new things. He's getting used to, for one thing, new names. Just a few days before, God had come and changed his name from Abram to Abraham, and had changed his wife's name from Sarai to Sarah, so that's confusing. He also has a 13-year-old son, so he's learning new things all the time about that. And his son just had the first ever bar mitzvah. Not sort of a bar mitzvah, much less mazel toving and much more recovery time, because what had really just happened the day before was that when God changed Abram's name to Abraham, God had commanded that everyone in the camp, including Abraham, be circumcised, which was a new thing. That's the face, Claire. That one right there. Yes, that's. So 3 travelers come by. He's sitting down, and he gets up and runs to these travelers, which you now understand is a pretty big deal. And he runs to get them food. And one of the things I love about this text is, who are these travelers? Who are these travelers? In the first verse, it says, Yahweh appeared to Abraham. That's what the text says these travelers are, Yahweh. And then when Abraham responds to them, he says, not knowing who he's talking to, he says, the English equivalent of "good sir," apparently addressing the leader of the 3. In English, it doesn't work out so well because the word Lord is used for both of those instances, but the Hebrew words are very different. One is Yahweh, this is God. The other one is just a formal greeting to whoever appears to be in charge. And this idea of God appearing to humans, it's interesting to hear how people take this. We have these stories of God appearing in Mount Sinai and the smoke, and the story I told a minute ago of the fire and the cloud, God appearing in these large and majestic ways. But we also have a story of Jacob in the middle of the night about to go meet his brother, who he's had a real falling out with for the last few decades. And a man comes to Jacob and wrestles with him. And at the end of it, he finds out that somehow was God. And this idea of these 3 folks somehow being God, it's fascinating to think about. And rabbis use a word for this presence of God. This isn't God, but this is the presence of God. And that's Shekinah. Shekinah, the presence of God. Sometimes it's a huge miraculous event, and sometimes, as we Christians know pretty well, it's a meal, like in this story. Sylvia, when I saw your name, Sylvia, I was glad to see that because you reminded me of something a few years back the other day. A week of eating together, 8 days actually of eating together. A few years back, Imam Islam and Rabbi Amy and I put together a group of folks that to study what we called the children of Abraham. And there were 7 folks from the mosque, 7 folks from the synagogue, and 7 folks from our church who were part of that group. And we spent the time talking about our faith traditions, talking about our beliefs, worshiping together. We visited each place of worship Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That was convenient. And we ate together every day for 8 days. And it's tricky because we see things differently. Perhaps the biggest single thing that this group saw differently was May 14th and 15th, 1948. Because for Jewish folks, May 14th, 1948 is the day that they were declared safe after literally thousands of years of being unsafe everywhere else in the world. After having been seen Europe try to eradicate them, and no one, not America, not Europe, no one be willing to step up and help protect them. May 14th, 1948, they have a country that they can be safe in. And that day isn't just a day in history, that is a day in the present. But May 15th, 1948, the very next day is known by a very different experience for Palestinians, of which most of them are Muslim. That's called the Nakba, the catastrophe, the day when at least 700,000 Palestinians were displaced and never got their land back. They were just kicked out. There was a Muslim man who, his parents had owned one of those houses. And they had lost everything they thought they had built in one day. And he was crying. And just the courage to be in that space, the courage it took for him to go be in a space with 7 Jews and 7 Christians and an imam and a rabbi and a pastor. That's Shekinah. That's the presence of God. The love that he was shown by the Jewish folks, by the Christian folks, by the Muslim folks, the love that the Muslim folks were showing the Jewish folks, Shekinah. As a Christian, I was in a weird space because I don't agree with the talking points of either so-called side. I think it's a tragedy that begets tragedy. I think it is suffering that begets suffering. There's so many bad choices being made up and down the line. As a Christian, what do I say about that? What do I know about that? Nothing. I know nothing about it. But it turns out we did serve. We did serve because one of the Jewish folks who was there came up to me, pulled me aside. I think it was on Tuesday night, and which was early in the week, and he had been a past president of the synagogue and had worked really intensely. He said, "We've been trying to make this happen for a decade. We've been trying to have some folks from the synagogue and some folks from the mosque sit down together and talk and even maybe share a meal, and it's never gotten anywhere. And it took a Christian being part of this for this to happen. Just our presence, just the presence of 8 Christians being there to form, I don't know, maybe a spiritual Switzerland. I don't know, which is odd for Christians to do, but just our being there created the possibility of this happening. Our being there and shutting up created the possibility for this to happen. So we did serve, and it was powerful. I don't think any one of the 7 folks from our church went away thinking, I'm so glad I was able to serve in this way. The 7 folks from our church went, that was an amazing experience. I've been so blessed by this. That's what Shekinah does. Shekinah blesses all those who are around. And it's powerful in those moments like the transfiguration or sunrise. It's powerful in those very special moments. But it's so powerful over time. The slow accumulation of God's presence in our lives and with each other. I mean, the transfiguration, that's an amazing story. Jesus on the mountaintop and his disciples and wah! But can you imagine walking from town to town with Jesus? Can you imagine what that would have been like? Give me the walking town to town any day of the week, right? Over time, hearing what Jesus sounds like when he's irritated. Hearing what Jesus sounds like when someone comes up to him that you're not expecting. Hearing what Jesus sounds like when I'm the one being irritating. Today at 1 p.m., there are going to be 12 of us going to Orland, Maine. You have some notes about this in your bulletin front, I believe. We're going to serve at home, H-O-M-E. I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's a great organization. Really, those of you who have worked in Jump, it has an ethos similar to Jump in the sense that it centers the dignity of the people who are served. So it's an organization serving folks who are experiencing a lot of poverty and some homelessness. Some of the time, so they have some ways to prevent homelessness. They have emergency shelters for folks who are experiencing homelessness, and then some ways to get out of that, to try to find housing for the future that is stable. They also have food services, and they have meals, but they have art classes, and they have something called the Homemade Craft Store, where people can sell their things that they have made and share their gifts. They have a place. Dignity isn't just about doing something for somebody. It's about getting to know them. It's about creating space for community. It's about honoring the gifts that they bring that maybe our society doesn't always honor as well as we should. So we're going to be working there. We're going to be working there over the next 4 or 5 days. We're going to be hosting a cookout for these folks on Tuesday night. One day of service is great, but there's something about 5 days together. For those of you who haven't done that, there's just something about an extended period of time with folks. You have to kind of get over yourself. We're going to be sleeping in the same room. Thank God for noise machines, I'll just say. We're going to be eating together. We're going to be driving together. We're going to be cleaning together. We're going to see each other at our best and at our worst. And I don't know, maybe it'll be another trip, but I've seen lives changed with these events. I have seen people's lives changed. So I was reading this story of Abraham, right? And I was thinking about it in the service trip, because these are 2 folks who are serving each other, by the way. We see Abraham getting the food for the messengers of God, for the angels, for these 3 folks. But these 3 folks are coming to Abraham to serve him by giving him a message and giving particularly Sarah a message. So they're serving each other. So I was thinking, well, what would the Christians be? And historically, Christians have kind of seen ourselves as the angels, as the ones who have like special truth coming from God, and we got this figured out, and let us come down from heaven to wherever it is, your little neck of the woods, and we'll take care of things. And it's true, God reveals truth to us and to everyone. But historically speaking, that hasn't worked out so great for us, right? Hasn't worked out so great for anybody when Christians think that we know it all. So I say, well, maybe we're Abraham. Maybe, and that's better because there's a passage in the book of Hebrews that many of you are familiar with, which talks about this story. It says, for some have entertained angels unawares. This idea that, the folks that you're serving, as you said, Dad, the folks that you're serving, that's the presence of God, right? And so Abraham's feels a little better, when I think about where do we fit in this story. But the problem with that is Abraham's a main character. And lots of times when it comes to service, it can be really easy to think of ourselves when we're providing service as the main character. And we're not. We're not. We're going for 4 days. We're not the main character in any story. We're the main character. If you ask home, they would say the main characters are the folks that they're serving. Those are the main characters. And if you ask home, they would say, you know what, if we're doing our job right, we're like a best supporting actor. And I don't know, as far as our group is concerned, maybe if we do really great, we're like the key grip. Maybe that would be awesome. But Rabbi David Kimhi, he's a 12th century rabbi. I'm sure y'all know his works very well. I'd never heard of the guy before, but in reading about this passage, Rabbi Kimhi said something that he pointed out. There's another character in this story, by implication, a character that I didn't notice when I was first reading the story, and I should have noticed because Jesus said, look out for this character, but I wasn't aware because that character doesn't seem important enough to look out for. And this other character is right there in the middle of everything while the Shekinah is happening. Right there. And it's in verse 4. My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And Rabbi Kimhi said, oh, that's not bring some water and wash your own feet. That's bring some water and a servant's going to wash your feet for you. One of my servants is going to be there washing your feet. Now, maybe I'm just hyper-religious, but that it seemed like I was remembering somebody who washed feet, who told us to wash feet. I think I vaguely remember something about foot washing in the Christian history. Am I the only one who remembers that? Right? Jesus washing the feet of his disciples, saying, this is what you do. This is who we're called to be. The foot washers right in the middle of the presence of God. Now that's something I can get behind. That's something I can understand. Shekinah, the presence of God we're going for 4 days to wash figurative, and if they ask us to, literal feet, it doesn't matter. We'll do whatever. And the blessing we get from that, it's like that children of Abraham where we're providing a blessing and not even knowing we're providing a blessing because what we're receiving is so overwhelming. And this sort of thing, and this is where it gets away from just the kids and gets to you. This sort of thing doesn't happen accidentally. It doesn't happen by accident. A lot of us walk around in our lives waiting for that moment where we just happen to walk by the transfiguration while it's happening and be like, oh, that's cool, that's the presence of God. But that's not usually how it happens. When it does, it gets written about in a book that we preserve for 2,000 years. Most of the time, how it happens is people creating space in their lives for the presence of God to be there. And you know what happens most of the time they do that? I actually don't see it. The presence of God can be there, but it takes us humans a while to see things. But sometimes we do. And it's a life-changing sort of thing. No one signs up accidentally to be the foot washers. No one signs up accidentally finding themselves doing the dishes at a soup kitchen. No one signs up accidentally to go away and paint buildings 6 hours away and to shingle roofs. That doesn't just happen. It takes energy and effort. It takes folks like Jason Vanderlaan, who spends months trying to put this together and making sure things work out. It takes folks like you who devote yourself, who dedicate your time and your money and your prayer to making this possible. It takes parents. I don't know if any of y'all are parenting like middle school and high school kids right now, but I got to tell you, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, not because kids are kids. Kids have always been kids. But the number of organizations and the number of things people are into and the number of emails and communications that you get around all that, it's a lot. And for parents to say, I'm going to intentionally do this so that my kids can do this is a huge deal. And then for kids to say, summer's just started, but I'm going to take a week and go away so I can serve people. There are other things they could be doing. So we're going to be going away, and I have an ask for you, and that is that you pray. Prayer matters. Prayer matters. And it's not a math equation. I don't get it, but I know it. Prayer matters. And I would pray, I would ask you to pray that we might serve well, that we might set aside our inclinations to be the main characters in the story, that we might wash feet or shingle or repair fences or feed folks or whatever it is that we're doing, that we might do that well, that we might see the presence of God around us because this is a holy place we're walking into. And I would ask you to pray for yourself. Because this coming week, you're going to be walking into a holy place. I don't know where it will be. And you won't be given advance warning probably. But I would ask you to pray for yourself that you will see the presence of God when you walk into that space. Thanks be to God. Amen.